Good evening, everyone. So we are here on the next Texas elections of 2022. We all know a lot of things in Texas are at stake. The voting day is November 8th. Early voting starts October 24th to November 4th. The least what we can do for this country is to go out and vote. Your vote is your voice. Make it stronger. And to make this country stronger, we have three very talented candidates who are running for different posts. And we have none other than Mr. Dennis Sherrard, who is running from District 94, Miss Terry Meza from District 105, and Alex Wallis from District 12. And they will please tell your position for what you are running and your introduction. To start with, from Dennis.
My name is Dennis Sherrard. I'm running for state representative in House District 94. It's in the mid-cities between Dallas and Fort Worth. It includes a little bit of Wallis, the city of Hurst, Arlington, and part of Fort Worth. I've been in politics for a long, long time, as you can tell by the gray in my beard. And I've never seen a more complex and urgent time to get engaged, to run for office, to go out and vote than we have right now. Dinesh was talking earlier about the necessity for people to vote. Our democracy is really on the ballot this year, and we all need to recognize that we have to do our part. So one of the reasons I'm running is to go back and make sure that everybody in Texas that's eligible to vote can do it easily, without interference, or without fear of favor.
Now moving forward to Terry Meza. Terry, your introduction.
Thank you, Dennis. My name is Terry Meza. I'm the state representative for House District 105, which is Irving south of 114. Pretty simple to describe, huh? After redistricting. I first ran for this position back in elections in 2014. That sounds like a long time ago, doesn't it? And the reason why I ran was because I didn't feel like our district was being very well represented. And I thought, it's right there in the name. It says representative. And our representative was doing a poor job of representing us. He felt totally comfortable going to Austin and voting against our interests. It's a majority-minority district, and yet he would vote against four anti-Sharia laws. He'd vote for bills that allowed police to stop and ask us to prove that we were citizens. We know who that was targeting. And I was very proud of the Asian Indian community. When I found out that they supported the Hispanic community, they knew that the bill was originally written to target Hispanics, but they also knew that Pakistanis, Nepalese, Bangladesh, Indians were all going to get caught up in that net with having to prove that they were citizens when they were out. So I ran in 2014 and I made it to a primary runoff. So 2014 was a runoff. 2016, I made it to a recount. I came up 64 votes short of winning in 2016. So I persisted, as they say. And I ran in 2018 when I was one of 12 flipped seats for House, 12 flipped seats in the state of Texas. So I ran for re-election last time, and this is my second time to run for re-election. So I've served 4 years, and I hope I can continue to have your support. It's important in a district as diverse as ours is, most diverse House district in the state of Texas, to have someone who will celebrate that diversity and believe in building bridges and not walls.
Thank you, Terry. And Alex Cornwallis.
Thank you, Dinesh. Thank you for inviting me here, and thank you, everyone. Well, I'm Alex Cornwallis. I'm running for the State Board of Education for District 12. Now, this is a district that has 12 counties in here, and Collin County is the largest district. So if you're anywhere in Collin County, you can vote for me. You'll see me in your ballot. And also the northern part of Dallas County and some other rural counties out there as well. Now, I wanted to express what does the State Board of Education do, right? That is something that is not very familiar, it's not used on a day-to-day basis. People don't actually normally go to a State Board of Education. But it is one of the most crucial roles, though. It is a position that sits on top of all the school boards. Remember, all the school boards in your district. So if you want to see real and effective change in your school boards, you want somebody that you can trust in the state board level. And that is why I'm running. Now, what does it mean that to have a state board of education member that you trust? It means that we, as a South Asian community, we are a large part of this community, yet we don't have any representation. And in the state board, when you have a representation, you can make sure that the school curriculum and the school system can all represent your voice. We have a very good numbers in this district. We all need to go out and vote. If we do vote, then we can have our own representation, and I'm your representation. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. So I wanted to continue by saying my example is why was I interested in politics. So in 2016, I wholeheartedly supported Hillary Clinton, who could not make it. And that night, when the results were declared, I was a bit sad. But my 8-year-old son, he started crying loud. And I asked him, "It's okay, my son. It's just an election. It will come after 4 years also." He said, "No, Dad. My son, who was born in America, who is an American citizen, 8 years old, he told me, 'No, Dad, America will not be the same again.'" I said, "Why?" "Because Donald Trump is the president." "Dad, do you have house in Nepal?" I said, "I left everything. This is my house here." And he said, "Dad, don't do that. Have a house built in Nepal." I told him, "No, I'm not gonna go back to Nepal. This is my home now. This is our home." And that day, I thought, with my conviction, I started joining politics, or I started to join politics. I just wanted to know your experiences. What inspired you? What motivated you to join politics? Starting with you, Terry.
Well, thank you. I kind of answered that in my introduction a little bit, at least for why I ran for this particular position. I grew up in a Democratic family. My father was a barber, and as you can imagine, he taught politics every day. I used to caught myself once saying that he was just a barber. I think I said that because I have colleagues who have fathers who are congressmen or millionaires and so on. But he was more than just a barber. He was a political analyst, a sports pundit. Maybe I got that backwards. Sports analyst and a political pundit, a marriage counselor, a storyteller, joke teller, and so on. So I inherited that from my father, I guess. So I heard politics all the time growing up, and the importance about the Democratic Party and how it was for the people, where the Republican Party was for the rich, was what I was told growing up. So I'd always heard about politics. Didn't become that much involved in politics as a young person, like a lot of young people do today, but I did become involved as an adult, and it was with mostly about civil rights issues, my involvement in LULAC, which is a Hispanic civil rights organization, and so that's what drew me into politics.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you. It said like the whole politics, you get good knowledge in a barber's shop. So I'm sure you got it from your dad. Thank you very much. Dennis, what inspired you?
Well, I'm not sure that anything necessarily inspired me. It was kind of expected. My entire family has been involved in politics. My mother and father were precinct chairs, election judges, candidates for office. When I was very, very young, I was involved in my first political campaign when I was 13 in stuffing letters for George McGovern for president. So that tells you how old I am. I ran my first campaign as a campaign manager when I was 23, running my father's city council election. To me, politics is always inspirational because it is the activity that decides and acts on what's possible. So we can choose to attack certain things. We can go after poverty, we can go after homelessness, we can go after crime, we can go after inflation. It's a matter of setting the priorities necessary to achieve the biggest amount of good for the most amount of people. And that stayed with me. I learned that from my dad. He was also a pundit. He ran a grocery store, and so he wasn't cutting hair, he was drinking coffee in the back room with everybody that came in, and they were always talking about politics. But this is what you carry away, that we're on this planet to leave it better than we found it, and the way you do that is help one another. And our political system is one of the best mechanisms to do that. It's not the only one, but it's one of the better ones because we have the ability of massing large groups of people, passing legislation that can then go into law and it can benefit people. And that has stayed with me my entirety of my political career, and I believe that to this day. I'm 63 years old, and I'm still an idealist about what's possible when we come together and work.
And I'm sure you're living with the expectations of your family because the amount of service you have contributed to the community. Thank you for that. Alex, what inspired you?
Well, Dinesh, let me find some commonality that you and I had. 28 years ago, I also immigrated to the United States. And I went to college here, and I was very impressed, thoroughly impressed with all the excellent college education, all the facilities we had, the professors, the scientific instruments. The possibilities were limitless. I could be anybody who I wanted to be. So I got qualifications. I finished my degree, I finished my master's, and came out. And when I came out, I realized that there was a huge barrier between myself and the exterior community. We had a huge cultural gap. They wouldn't understand who I am, where I'm from, what I am. And that is one of the reasons, the main reason was that we did not have enough representation out there to tell our story, to tell the immigrant story out there, who we are. We're also qualified. And I reached out to my friends here, local friends, and told about our stories, who we are, what we are. Pretty soon, I made some headway. That's the first time I realized that, it's the knowledge about us that is not present in the community that is the main reason why everything is happening. Now that I'm older and father of children, I realize that we have to do this knowledge transfer in mass scale. And the best way to do it is to be in politics. Now there's another saying, a quite well-known saying in Texas. If you are not at the table, which is if you are not participating in politics, then you're on the menu. That means you'll be eaten. So if we South Asian community participate and want to tell our story, want to be respected, then we want to make sure we come out and vote and have your representation in the government.
Thank you, Alex. Yes, so my son is in high school now, and I see a lot of issues which we face in Texas, the education system. And the other thing is, being in America, being in Texas, education and healthcare, it is a privilege, but we all believe that it should be a citizen's right. So what do you think? How can we have that as a right? Every citizen of this country, especially in Texas, they have access to healthcare and good education, starting with Dennis.
Well, I definitely believe that healthcare is a right. If you're a living, breathing human being, if you get sick, you need to be able to see somebody to get care. And the quality of the care shouldn't depend upon the size of your pocketbook or the zip code you live in, color of your skin, or anything else like that. That's a fundamental level of rationality, I think, that everybody innately knows, but it all gets wrapped up in this fact that we have this pay-for system that is enriching quite a large number of people. They don't want to give it up. The obvious answer for us is to have a national healthcare system. Here in Texas, we are the worst insured state in the country, and that includes District of Columbia and so on. So we're 51st. We have an incredibly high level of maternal mortality rate. There's an enormous number of statistics. You can look at that. None of them are something to be proud of. Also in this state, we have some of the best medical schools, some of the best technology schools, and research universities that you've ever seen. So why the contradiction? Why can't somebody that can't afford to pay out of pocket, they can't afford their insurance premiums, why do they have to fend for themselves when they become ill? They can't get that care. Well, the answer is, again, it's a matter of choice. The legislature decided in 2010 not to accept Medicaid expansion, which would have immediately insured another, or gained access to insurance, another 1.2, 1.3 million people immediately. That was 11 years ago. It meant about $100 million a year of funding coming to the state to help deal with that cost of care. So we've left literally over billions of dollars on the table of monies that we've sent out. We're actually subsidizing other states' Medicaid systems. And it's simply not right. It was a choice made that I think was purely political, but it's a choice that is cruel, and I think it's immoral, and we need to rectify that. And that's one of the things I hope, if I get to Austin, I want to work on, is see Medicaid get expanded, and then see an expansion of things like telehealth and clinics that can accept people at low or no cost, because we've got to care for the people that live in this state. It's a moral issue.
Thank you, Dennis. Teddy, your views on that?
He covered healthcare so well, I'm just going to add a few things to what he said. And that is that these are our tax dollars that we've sent off to the federal government. And so most of the states are in agreement that they want those dollars back. Texas, being Texas, feels like it doesn't want any help from the federal government. Doesn't seem to recognize that those are our own dollars that we would be getting back. So I think we should try to convince our Republican colleagues that we do want our own money back. It's going to help in another way. Another big thing that Republicans like to talk about is property taxes. And a big chunk of our property taxes goes toward our county hospitals here in Dallas and Tarrant County. And so if they can get reimbursed for what are now unreimbursable expenses, then that'll take the burden off the taxpayer, and then the patient would be able to have their medical services paid for. I grew up self-insured as a child, and so I know how families make decisions based on what you can afford to do in the way of health care, not really what the doctor might recommend or what the dentist might recommend, but, well, can we afford that? No, we can't, so you're not going to get that care. So too many families are in that situation that they can't get the health care that's recommended by their doctors because they can't afford it. So we need to change that. In education, we need to remove the obstacles for our youth getting an education. I filed a bill in 2019. It was House Bill 1040. And no, I don't know the numbers of all the bills I filed. I just remember that one for the obvious reasons. We had joked that if we had known it was going to get the number 1040, we would have made it a tax bill. But it was the Texas Promise, based on that Dallas County has a Dallas Promise, and the state of Tennessee had a program that was the Tennessee Promise. And it meant that you had education up through, instead of K through 12, it was K through 14. So the bill passed out of the Higher Ed Committee. It just never made it to a vote on the House floor. But since then, the University of Texas has come up with a Texas Promise for the University of Texas system so that students can get the money that they need. So we don't want money to be an obstacle. It was one of the things I ran on when I first ran, was making college affordable again. I went during a time when there was something called tuition regulation. So since tuition was regulated, it was very affordable. Again, my father was a barber, could sit at the end of the registration line because we had to register in person then. And when I got to the end, to the bursar, and they said how much it was, my dad got out his checkbook, made out a check for entire month's a semester's tuition, and turned it in. Something I cannot do with all my education today. I can't get out my checkbook and pay a full semester's tuition for 15, 17 hours. So the difference wasn't that we were rich. The difference was that college was affordable. And so I want college to be affordable again so that anyone who wants to go can go, and the cost is not an obstacle. So we have other obstacles to education, and one of my concerns is this interest in controlling what teachers teach, which a lot of that focus, Alex, right, has been on the public school level, but our universities are worried about it because when we said, we don't know why you're focusing so much on CRT, because it's in the college level. They don't even teach that at the public school. Oh, it's on the college level. Well, we need to go after it in college too. They don't want it taught in college either. So university presidents are worried about it. I specifically met with the UTA president recently. She says it's going to hurt our ability to attract good professors to Texas. The professors are not going to want to come here. They're also going after tenure. Another reason why professors are not going to want to come here. And then when you get into the medical field, we don't do a good job in offering enough residencies for our medical students. So when they go out of state to do their residency, what typically happens is where you do your residency is where you stay. And so our Texas students go out of state and they don't come back.
Oh.
So we're doing a poor job in developing doctors and developing professors and so on with our bad policies. I say our, meaning Texas, not something I'm supporting, but with our bad policies. So we need to change and take all those obstacles away.
Thank you, Terry. And as Alex, you are for the State Board of Education, what are your views on improving the education system in Texas, and how will you play a key role in that?
Sure, definitely. And I can also answer a little bit of the healthcare side as well. Now, the State Board of Education, we don't have a legislative power to influence any of the healthcare. However, we can do better. What we can do is that we, in the State Board, we can send out, we develop the curriculums so that every student in Texas studies, right? In one of the curriculums, in the curriculum, we can insert the prevention, how to stay healthy, what not to do, and how to take care of yourself, including to the basics, let's say how wash your hands, and careful about the germs, and careful about the irresponsible behaviors you do, those kind of things. Now, those goes into the cure portion of it. As we know, those goes in the prevention portion of it. So as you know, prevention is better than cure. Yeah. So, of course, we'll still get sick, we still need the hospitals and so. Now, as far as educational improvement, what we could do is that we have a major problem in the State Board of Education in Texas nowadays because the curriculum and the instruction materials that are set up and created are antiquated, pretty old, did not catch up with the dot-com boom or did not catch up with the technology boom at all. And I know that firsthand. I'm in a technology field. I am a senior cloud architect, and I see that on a day-to-day basis. How, when we try to hire graduates from here, we simply cannot find them because there aren't any, because our school system hasn't prepared them for so. And that is the first thing when I get elected. That is the first thing I'll fix. I'll fix the curriculum so that it synchronizes and it is in sync with what is needed out in the corporate world, out in the modern world. And it's badly needed. It's about time we make that change.
Now moving forward to Terry, I just don't believe that we live in 21st century and we tell our mothers, our sisters, our daughters, our women of Texas how to lead their life, what to do with their body. Government dictates as if they don't have their own rights. They don't have their own rights towards their own body. So Terry, how will you work with the women's rights in Texas?
Well, I voted against the bills that we had in front of the legislature. As you might imagine, I am a Planned Parenthood champion and endorsed by Planned Parenthood. But more importantly than endorsements is just simply the lives that it affects in Texas. This is a a right that we thought we won 50 years ago. And we're going backwards. It's not the only thing we're going backwards on, but this was a right that was won 50 years ago, and we're losing it, lost it. The impact is terrible. I've even heard, my son's in his early 30s, that he has friends that are saying they're going to delay having a family. They're going to delay the decision. And we're talking about married couples, delaying because you don't know what's going to happen during a pregnancy. And they don't want to have a child or even be pregnant in a state where medical services are denied. And I don't think our Republican colleagues thought it through very well, that what's happening is that medical services that are needed, that are life-saving, are being denied. I hear some discussions, some rumblings and rumors that they might be willing to, they've gotten a lot of pushback about no exceptions, that they might be open to next session a bill that says that they'll allow exceptions in the case of rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Well, of course I'll support that, but that's a small thing. It's a small change, and we're going to have lawsuits or something, or change if everybody votes and vote the rascals out, or we can have people that support a woman's right to govern her own body. Then that would be the best if we can get to that point.
Yes.
But yes, we need women to have the right to govern their own bodies.
Yes. And the sad part is, this has become as a political agenda for many politicians. I wish that women, they take the right decision and give vote to the right people, so that we have the women rights back to themselves. So Dennis, as you being a father, a grandfather, how do you feel when women are not respected the way they should be in Texas?
Well, it infuriates me. It makes me incredibly angry. First of all, this is a result of an issue that has been used as a political wedge on both sides of the field ever since the Roe case was decided in 1973. This could have been codified by Congress in the next legislative session in 1975. But it hasn't, because the anti-abortion people like to run on it. Pro-choice people like to run on it because it's been wedge issues, and they thought it was settled law. This should be a lesson for everybody, that unless something is in black letter law, it's always subject to change. Now, to the issue directly, this is nothing new in Texas. Texas treats its women abysmally. We continue to have a pay equity issue here, where women earn on average about 80% to the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar with women. We have a terrible maternal mortality rate here. We have absolute no universal pre-K, which we need to have. We have a child care system that costs women $8,000 to $10,000 a year, which is a substantial part of the majority of the women in this state's income. We have about 2 million women in poverty right now. So our treatment of women over time has been horrific. With this particular issue, it's become cruel, because they passed a law, and if you are a pro-life person, I can respect your opinion on that. But they passed a law that did not comport with the will of the people in Texas. More than 65% of the people of Texas say that Roe versus Wade should be the law of the land. And the legislature went completely against that. So a minority decision overturning the will of the people, that's the first thing. Second thing, this is a party that has always espoused itself as being the party of a limited government. They want the government hands off of people. I have never seen anything more intrusive than telling a woman what she can do with her body. But make no mistake, this is not the last thing they're going to attempt to do. They're already telling us they're coming after contraception. They're already telling us they're coming after same-sex marriage. This is a problem that is becoming more egregious because a very small group of people
have decided that our country is on the wrong track. We're moving away from traditional Western civilization, cultural belief systems and standards. And this is their attempt to try to bring that back. It's not going to work because women, number one, are going to, in massive numbers, throw a lot of these people out of office. You know, like new people that have written, like my particular opponent this cycle was one of the guys that wrote and offered up bills that would put women in prison for having an abortion. It just doesn't make any sense. It's a personal issue. A woman shouldn't be told what to do with her body any more than you and I should, right? So we have got to rectify this problem, and I think we will this November, because I think enough women have decided, look, you know, if you don't like an abortion, don't have one, but don't tell me I can't, right? It's a personal choice. It should remain that way.
Okay. Thank you, Dennis. Yes, very true. Women should be given the, so it comes to you back again. Issues on immigration. And recently, what makes me nervous is there were buses going from Florida to the northeast side of the states, and it reminds me of those old slavery days. That's what you do to immigrants. Just send them on buses so that you can have a political will, what you want to give as a message in politics. That's what is being done in this country. Makes nervous, and history knows whenever immigrants are threatened, the country is not in the right track. Those countries where immigrants feel safe will always prosper. So again, immigrants are human beings too. And how can we solve this issue in Texas, where the mentality of politicians have become to not to take immigrants seriously, just to treat the immigrants as they feel right in their politics. Starting with you, Dennis.
Well, once again, I think there's a lot of political theater here, right? It's wedge issues that have been used for a long time. And how do we know this? Because there have been multiple attempts at immigration reform over the last 40 or 50 years that have gotten to a point and then failed. The last substantive piece of legislation that would have helped the situation on the border and on any immigration issue was passed by the Senate in 2013, but it was not passed by the House because the Tea Party conservatives revolted about this bill and they wouldn't allow John Boehner to put it on the floor. So it died. And we've had nothing but a series of executive orders. President Obama's DACA program, which was a wonderful thing, allowing the children of immigrants to stay here, have temporary protected status, and so on. It should be codified into law. It's not. It's being threatened again by the Republicans. With respect to Texas, Texas has used this as a wedge for as long as I've been alive. And Republicans and Democrats alike have behaved pathetically on this in terms of any legislation that's been passed to try to deal with it. One of the central reasons we have so many issues right now with the immigration influx is because the Trump administration eviscerated CBP and other organizations who were responsible for immigration judges, for processing asylum claims, and so on. And we have to remember that the majority of people seeking to come into this country are coming here on a refugee basis. They're fleeing persecution, they're fleeing climate disasters, they're fleeing economic suppression. That's just what we're seeing come from Latin America. We also have an immigration issue with people overstaying their visas. We have an enormous number of people from Europe that are in this country that have overstayed their visas. You don't see Ron DeSantis or Greg Abbott going and rounding up a bunch of Swedes and putting them on buses and sending them to Washington. You know why, right? Because the symbolism here is that they only want to do this with brown people. They only want to do this with people that don't look like them. We can make a major impact on this problem if we
increase our number of immigration judges processing claims. We increase facilities that allow guest worker programs and document people and allow them to come in this country and work. We need to catch people that are here to do us harm and put them in jail or deport them. If you are coming into this country illegally, and I want to be very specific here, if you're coming into this country seeking asylum, you're not coming into this country illegally. If you're seeking asylum, you have a legitimate, internationally recognized right to do so. If you're coming into this country because you're a drug mule, you're part of an organized crime gang, that's where you need to get caught and you need to get put away and put in prison. We need to enforce those laws. We can do this, but we've right now got such political division between the two major parties that Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis will not get on a plane and fly to Washington, D.C. and sit down with President Biden and try to come up with a reasonable solution to this. They want to demagogue this. They would rather bus immigrants to Washington, D.C. So until we get past this, and we recognize that we're always going to have this issue until everybody's got a vested interest in it and has got influence and can do something about it, sits down at a table and says, this is how we're going to deal with it, and they all agree, we're going to continue to see this happen. It's wrong, it's cruel. Once again, the human beings that are being used as pawns in this are being maltreated, right? And we have always recognized that this is a human rights issue. Plus, we need to also recognize, unless you're full-blooded First Nation, you are an immigrant or a descendant of an immigrant. It's not that hard to fathom, right? So we need to treat people with dignity and respect and as human beings, not as somebody from El Salvador or from Guatemala or from China or Nepal. They need to be treated as human beings in this country.
Thank you. And as we all know, America was built by immigrants, and that's how it became great. Continuing it with Terry, you yourself, as coming from an immigrant background, what do you think about this?
Well, my family's been here since the 1800s, which is not long by Nepalese standards. In your country, that's just recent history, right? But so there's the joke about we didn't cross the border crossed us. But there's a lot of good points made by our friend here, Dennis, about what could be done in the way of immigration reform. Unfortunately, immigration reform, which he said, is something that's done at the federal level. Does Texas as a state have some role in patrolling our borders? Of course it does. But what we're doing is wrong. And I want to steal that two words that Dennis used, and that was political theater. What we're seeing is not a governor who's offering solutions to an immigration problem. What we're seeing is a governor who's using the immigration problem for political theater. What exactly do I mean by that? Sending the National Guard down there. Those poor people are supposed to be helping with other kinds of crises. Actually sent somewhere where they can do some good. They're pulled away from their family for long periods of time. There have been suicides in the National Guard ranks. And they have no authority whatsoever to do anything except just stand there and look threatening because they've got on military uniforms. So they're just there to bully or for show. They have no authority whatsoever. If they were going and they were going to say, we're going to help out the Border Patrol because they're overwhelmed. But no, they're not helping out the Border Patrol. All they can do is just stand around. The DPS are sent. DPS have no authority in the area of immigration. What can they do? They can drive around and stop the people in South Texas for minor traffic offenses and try to see if they can find out anything from the traffic stops. But otherwise, they're basically harassing the residents of South Texas. They also are helping protect ranch lands of very wealthy, large ranch owners, and they stop people for trespassing. The problem with those tactics by the DPS is, even though they might be stopping people, writing them a ticket for some offense, is that that's not immigration. And so they send them back, and they have all the rights in the world to come right back in again. Or if they go through our immigration system and they're found that they need to go back, then there's a kind of a hold put on returning. So we're spending billions of dollars on this political theater, not to mention the cost of the buses that you referred to earlier, for tactics that do no good whatsoever. There are other methods that we could do to patrol the border. We have all kinds of great technology where that can be set up to catch people crossing and be in a much more humane way. And we're wasting billions of dollars. Again, you talked about how our colleagues on the other side of the aisle are supposed to be for small government. They're also supposed to be for limited spending.
Yes.
And supposed to care about fiscal spending. And they doesn't seem to bother them at all the waste of billions of dollars on the border because they're able to use it for political gain and political theater. So there's so many needs that we have in Texas, from education and healthcare as issues you've already brought up, important needs that money could have gone for, and to see it just wasted in a way where it's doing absolutely no good whatsoever.
Very true, very true. Thank you, Terry. Thank you. Now we are in the closing of our program today. Thank you for coming. I would ask from Alex, have your closing remark and why our viewers should come and vote for you.
Sure. If you go to a classroom, if you look at the composition of the students, you'll see it'll be dotted with South Asian students. You can recognize them very easily.
Don't you just love his passion? We're talking about
The closing
remarks
What?
for the election.
Yes.
So, as Dinesh mentioned at the very beginning, early voting starts Monday, October 24th. And we need everybody to get out and vote. If your vote wasn't important, the other side would have not been trying so hard to suppress your vote. That's why I wrote quorum and went to Washington, D.C. Some of my Republican colleagues said, get back to Austin and do your job. To which my response was, I represent a minority district whose voting rights are under attack. And by being in Washington, D.C. to advocate for the National Federal Voting Rights Act, I am doing my job in fighting for their right to vote. So every vote's important. You heard me mention about losing by 64 votes. Every vote counts, and so if for some reason you think your vote's not important, it is. Not only as a number, but for some of you who come from immigrant families, then you may be the vote in your household if you're the one who's the citizen. And so your vote not just represents you, it represents your family. It represents your community. So you're voting for more than just your vote, but it's your civic duty, and I hope that you'll do that. If you come to Irving City Hall, come by and say hi to me. Thank you.
Dennis.
Well, first of all, thank you for having this presentation tonight. I'm always honored to be with Representative Meza. She was very modest in her introductory remarks. She's considered to be one of the best legislators in Austin, and I hope to be working with her come next January. Alex, I wish I lived in your district. I would be voting for you. I really love what you're doing, man. And you're so true. This, Alex, Terry's background and so on, it goes without saying that, as you described, Dinesh, we are a community of immigrants. We always have been since our founding. But one of the things that I don't think we recognize enough is the commitment to the idea of America that new immigrants have. Without fail, everyone that I talk to, whether it's on the campaign trail, the people I worked with during my business career, and by the way, I used to have to lead a whole bunch of you, senior cloud architects. I was working before. I had a large, diverse community. I worked across the world internationally. And everybody that came here and made a life choice to come to the United States and become an American came with a sense of duty, with a sense of commitment, with a sense of pride in the idea of what this country could be. We should never, ever forget that. Now, with respect to the closing arguments on the election, this is a choice. We have to decide if what has been going on is in the best interest of our kids and our grandkids. If you left the place today, would you be satisfied that the governance of our state and of our nation is being done correctly and being done with goodwill and being done with an intent to improve the lives of its citizens and represent them effectively? I can't say that because I don't believe it. I don't believe that we currently represent the people correctly. And this is a choice. Again, if you're in favor of the status quo, by all means support that. But if you want to see this country move towards the words in the Constitution about becoming a more perfect union, you have to recognize that the status quo must change. There are things that will force us to change. Climate change will force us to change. The economic difficulties we have are forcing us into different behaviors and changes. There's a slew of issues and worries that we have to be concerned about. But the most important thing that we have to worry about is securing and safeguarding our democracy for the generations that come behind us. That's what this election is about, is ensuring that your kids and their kids can have their voice heard, can be part of the decision process on how we decide to govern ourselves and live our rights. So everybody that is registered to vote, please take it as a sacred mission and duty to go do so. Early voting starts next Monday. It runs through November 4th. Election day is November 8th. You can find a place to vote in Tarrant County, where my district is. There are 36 voting centers, and you can vote in any one of them. You don't have to go to a specific polling place. So it is as convenient and easy as possible. There's no excuse not to do this.
Thank you.
Please vote.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And I would like to say thanks to Uskhabar. We try to cover every news and every view. It is important to us. As Mahatma Gandhi said, the change has to come within. This time, make that change by going to the voting poll and casting your precious vote. In the end, I would like to say, me and you, let's make Texas blue. Thank you. Thank you very much.